Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News for this Wednesday, the 21st day of August, 2024. And the headlines again emphasize that the situation in Israel, Gaza, Iran, etc., is getting desperate. In fact, we have another story about the ceasefire hostage talks are on the brink of collapse. So, what happens? Joe Biden calls Prime Minister Netanyahu about compromising to reach a deal, and Kamala Harris, we're told, was on the phone call. Now, Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas, wants a deal that guarantees his safety and his life, we are told. At the same time, Defense Minister Gallant says the IDF has actually destroyed 150 tunnels on the Egypt-Gaza border. Amazing. And for the second straight day, there has been public prayer on the Temple Mount, with the Israeli police not attempting to stop it. And that is absolutely unheard of. All right, let's go to the stories. Headline number one, hostage ceasefire talks on brink of collapse as Hamas remains intransigent. Unnamed officials expressed concern that failure to reach an agreement will lead Iran to attack Israel, widening the Gaza war into a regional conflict. Talks between Israel and Hamas to bring about a ceasefire and hostages for prisoner deal are, quote, on the brink of collapsing. While Washington has been publicly expressing optimism, the official said efforts to bring Hamas on board, the latest proposal endorsed by Israel, has so far been unsuccessful, with White House officials said to be frustrated by the Palestinian terror group's hardline rhetoric against it. As though they're surprised by this, the U.S. outlet says this has led to growing concern that the negotiations will fail. You think so? One of the sources was quoted as saying, "We don't know if Hamas leader Sinwar wants this deal, but if we don't get the deal, there's a chance that Iran attacks, and this escalates into a full-blown confrontation," which seems to be exactly what Sinwar wants. As we know, the Middle East has been bracing for Iran's promised retaliation over the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh on July 31st. That makes it 3 weeks since the murder. Well, the killing, well, anyway. Israel has never confirmed nor denied that it was behind the killing. The report said U.S. officials were still hopeful Hamas may abruptly accept the deal, citing past instances in which it spontaneously agreed to truce deals after publicly opposing them. All right, here's the bottom line. This continual lack of progress cannot last forever. Hopefully, the realization will finally hit that you can't negotiate with Hamas. However, Joe Biden tries to come to the rescue, which is our second headline. Biden wants Netanyahu to compromise on Gaza ceasefire. Yeah, really. U.S. President Joe Biden, lame duck U.S. President Joe Biden, need to get it right, spoke by phone with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday about ways to advance a possible Gaza hostage deal as efforts to finalize an agreement appeared to falter. President Biden spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel to discuss the ceasefire and hostage deal release and diplomatic efforts to de-escalate regional tensions, a White House statement said. Also, we're told that Kamala Harris joined in on the call. Now, nothing has been revealed about the contents of the call except that Biden wants Netanyahu to cave in on certain issues that we know would irreparably harm Israel's security. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, God bless him, keeps saying no, no, no. Okay, headline number three. Sinwar wants a deal that guarantees his safety and life, senior Egyptian official says. Cairo insists on a deal that stipulates no Israeli presence in the Philadelphia corridor and doubts that talks can succeed given Hamas's refusal to send a delegation, hinting that if Israel wants a deal, killing Sinwar would have to be off the table. In other words, you got to keep him alive to get a deal. In the corridors of the Egyptian government, a palpable sense of pessimism lingered on Wednesday, following Secretary of State Antony Blinken's discussion with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Egyptian insiders claim Blinken conveyed to the president and his foreign minister a stark message from the U.S. vantage point. This current rounds of talks may well be the last indirect engagement between Israel and Hamas. The urgency was clear. Reaching a conclusive agreement is paramount, and the sponsors, Egypt and Qatar, must persuade both Hamas and Israel to embrace the American proposal without adding complications. All right, on the idea that Sinwar wants a deal that guarantees his safety, there's a number of comments I would like to make, but I think I'll keep silent on that, okay? The next story shows why Israel must continue in Rafah, and this is really incredible. Gallant, he's the defense minister of Israel, said that the IDF has destroyed 150 tunnels just on the Egypt-Gaza border, and they've defeated Hamas's Rafah brigade. The army says it killed dozens of gunmen and struck 30 targets, including Hamas's command post in a school. It urges evacuation from the humanitarian area set to become a dangerous combat zone. More than 150 tunnels have been demolished along Gaza's southern border, Defense Minister Gallant announced Wednesday, as the army said it destroyed some 30 terror sites and killed dozens of gunmen in airstrikes across the enclave over the past day. Speaking to troops at the Philadelphia corridor, which runs along the border, Gallant said the IDF's 162nd Division has defeated Hamas's Rafah brigade, which is centered in the Strip's southernmost city. The most important thing is to remember that the goals of the war, what they are, that is we need to meet them regarding Hamas, the hostages, and now, this is interesting, now to look north. That is Hezbollah. Gallant was referring to simmering tensions with Iran's Lebanese proxy Hezbollah. Now get this, which earlier in the day fired over 50 rockets at the north amid fears of an all-out war. Now add this to the 125 they fired yesterday. And so again, you've got the lingering problem with Hezbollah. Once Hamas is done with, you still got that horrible problem in the north, which is so much worse and so much more dangerous. Well, now our last story is the most biblical, significant of all. Headline number 5, Jews bow in prayer on the Temple Mount, violating the status quo as police stand by and watch. Police officer ignores bowing in prayer on the Temple Mount for a second day in a row, defying the status quo which prohibits Jewish worship at the site. A Jew who was praying on the western side near of the Temple Mount followed Ben-Gvir's advice and prayed openly and publicly. And guess what? Nobody stopped him. This is unreal. Police appear to have normalized defying the status quo on the Temple Mount, under which Jewish worship is prohibited at the site. It's been that way since 1967, since the Jews have that was the day they liberated Jerusalem, June 6, 67. They've been in charge of Jerusalem all this time. The Temple Mount, remember, they put the Temple Mount back in the hands of Islam, and there hasn't been any freedom of worship on the Temple Mount from day one, even though 3 times a day, every Orthodox Jew for the last 2,000 years prays morning, noon, and night for the Lord to speedily rebuild the temple. In 67, when they got the real estate back, what did they do? They gave it back to Islam, and the agreement was, at least from Islam's perspective, there's no prayer allowed, no Jewish worship allowed. But now we see it for the second day in a row, for the first time, this has been allowed on the holy site. So this is basically, like we said, unheard of, but it's probably something we will continue to see. Scripture teaches that not only will there be freedom of worship on the Temple Mount, but a third temple will be built, which will be center stage for last days events according to Scripture. We document that in our book, The Jews, Jerusalem, and the Coming Temple. We talk about the status quo, how that came about, what it means, how it's been implemented, but that the Scripture very clearly predicts that in the last days before the second coming of Christ, the Temple Mount will be ground zero, center stage for the events that will take place, culminating in the return of Christ. So that's why we always keep our eye on the Temple Mount. And as we say, Jerusalem is God's clock. This nation is the hour hand. The city of Jerusalem is the minute hand, but the Temple Mount is the second hand. So again, we fully document in this book, The Jews, Jerusalem, the Coming Temple. It's a free download from our website, Educating Our World, found under the heading of Bible prophecy. So a lot going on. Next couple of days should be really, really interesting. Tomorrow night, Kamala Harris speaks at the Democrat convention. Will she mention Israel? And then Friday, a really interesting story is breaking now that Senator Robert Kennedy Jr., who's running for president, is going to make a major announcement. Seemingly, he will withdraw from the race. And there are rumors that he's going to endorse Donald Trump. Now, we don't know that for a fact, but we will see. So there's never a dull moment as we see the events taking shape in our world. All right, I'm Don Stewart. As always, thank you so much for being part of this. Keep praying for us. If you haven't, start praying. We really appreciate that, what you're doing for this ministry. It's very, very important. And we're excited about what's taking place. And again, all the resources we have on our website are free. There's never a charge for them. So please take advantage of them. Okay, until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.